Everyone, welcome in. Betsperts Golf here for our first look at the 2026 Waste Management Phoenix Open, People's Open, the best Super Bowl pregame show that you can find. Coming off of a wire-to-wire finish at Torrey Pines for Justin Rose and for our guy, PJ Splits 101, Ron Kloss on Rose, modeled well for Rose, no sweat finish for Ron's first outright of the year. What's going on, buddy? Nice hit.
Hey, yeah, I'm surprised more people weren't on Justin Rose. I mean, I know, we're two guys who are getting older up in our years, but we can still go out and play fine. And so, I think Justin Rose is a guy who we saw him last year. Like, he won the FedEx St. Jude, going back to the Masters, we saw what he did there, finishing runner up. And he looked good early in the year too. So, I think he's a guy that, obviously had course history, and he's just someone who, from a value perspective, I got him at 66-1. If you look at his DFS price, I mean, he's only 2,500. So, he's someone who, running the rabbit hole models. I think he finished 10th for me in my rabbit hole model. So, yeah, it was just a runaway victory. And so just always good to see a guy, in the mid 40s doing something like that.
45, adding speed and distance. I mean, obviously, can get white hot with the putter. He, I mean, when he kind of put his foot down when he got over the South Course too, and you knew, even on Friday, it felt like, he had get off to such a good start. But you're like, all right, he's got to come back. He's going to play the South, and then just absolutely dominated right away. And it felt like, man, this is very minimal sweat, I would think, all weekend. And he just kind of continue to pull away. No one really threatened at any point on the weekend. Really impressive stuff. And he's had, just a really strong last, year plus. When you think about, winning at the FedEx, playoff event last year, obviously almost winning the Masters, the great, fantastic finish, fantastic Ryder Cup, like just continuing to play really, really, really good golf. It even felt like coming out of the 23 Ryder Cup that there's a chance that, a lot of young guys coming up on the Euro side. Could you get both Højgaards in there? Could there be someone else that emerges that really takes that last spot on the European Ryder Cup for Rose? And then he made it really clear that he deserved to be on that team at Bethpage. And then, we're getting off to a great start already for, as we kind of look for 2027, he's still just hyper competitive and can get it done. Again, when you add speed, you typically at that age are kind of leaking a little bit of ball speed, and the game's maybe kind of shifting gears. He seems to not be shifting gears. So good for Rosie, great win, and good call for you, and a nice big price. So TPC Scottsdale, fantastic track, par 71, 72 and change, ball striker paradise. We're at altitude, which can impact things here a little bit. Some fairly sticky course history, really strong field, a little bit terrifying though, Ron, because Scotty Scheffler's in the field and has played well here, has won a couple times here, obviously coming off of a boat racing of everyone last time out at the Amex. And it's going to be a without Scheffler market for me this week at 2-1. I just am not going to take that on. If you want to parlay Scotty with the Super Bowl winner, knock yourself out. But I don't know how you're going to approach this week, but let's take a look at the field. What are your thoughts on Waste Management, TPC Scottsdale? What do we need to know?
Yeah, just going back to your Scotty comments there. So I looked it up, and going back to last year's WM Phoenix Open. So there were 12 tournaments Scotty played that he did not win. And that the winner, who, obviously if Scotty didn't win, someone else is going to win here. So the winner's average world ranking was 11th, and their pre-tournament average odds were 44-1. So, again, if Scotty's not going to win this week, and I agree with you, we're pretty much at the point of without markets here. But if you are going to go against him, even in those markets, you need to pick someone who's actually good at golf. Even JJ Spawn, who was, 151 at the US Open, turns out JJ Spawn's pretty good at golf as well. So, the list as long of, guys at the top of the board here who, who are one of the few that beat him. And so I'm not going the long shot route probably anymore when Scotty's in the field. I just don't think any of those guys have any potential to even come close to beating him. So yeah, I'm going back to, to Phoenix here. This is a course where a lot of people kind of get the impression it's a birdie fest, but you do have average winning score, kind of is around that 20 under range. But like, this is actually a challenging course in many areas, off the tee. When you look at some of the past winners, it's a who's who of kind of ball strikers and guys who you look at, even a guy like Thomas Dietrich last year, really good off the tee, can get really hot on the greens. Obviously, Scotty's won here twice. Brooks has won here twice. Hideki twice. Even a guy, even another thing that comes into play here, doing my research is a lot of even the shorter ball strikers. Webb Simpson won here. Other guys in the past that had success. So you don't need length here, but this is a huge driving course, longest driving course on tour. I think last year, I can't remember what it was, but I know the last 5 years, we're at 304 yards average off the tee. So this is a course where length helps. Obviously, you do have some areas. If you get wide, if you hit errant tee shots, we're talking about, these desert waste areas. We have 5 water hazards. So you want a guy who's, you don't have to be super accurate off the tee, but you also don't want a guy who, when we look up, distance from edge of the fairway, a guy who's, just hitting it wildly errant off the tee. So, that's what I'm looking for. Obviously, approach always matters. And then on these Poetry of Greens, again, these are some of the purest putting surfaces. Hideki proved here, you don't have to be a great putter to win. And so I think for me, it's a huge ball striking week. And you do have some tricky around the green areas from the short grass. This is one of the tougher courses. Yep. If you're, especially on some of these, we have the 3 par 5s, and then we have the other, the drivable par 4. And so guys are going to go for it here. That's one of the keys to success as well, is, how aggressive can you be here? But if you're not, if you're short of the green, or you find one of these collection areas, you do need some short game skills, especially from the short grass here. I think we can take a look at that as well in the around the green data. But I'm pretty sure it's a high percentage of shots here compared to average that are going to be from the short grass and kind of those tight lie areas.
Yep, you can see here on the screen about 7% above tour average from the short grass compared to the rough. A little less frequent than we get around the green from the rough. A lot of shaves, runoffs, and great call out too on the approach numbers. You can see going for the green rate significantly higher than a tour average event. Last year, almost 74% of the field was going for the green in 2. So you were, not necessarily losing out, but your opportunities to go for eagle opportunities, 2-putt for birds versus, leaving yourself a scoreable chip, or, just a wedge in, and hopefully that you leave yourself with close proximity for a birdie. You're obviously going to be rewarded more frequently for the aggressiveness and going for the green here. So you see that, about 10 to 15% above tour average, depending on, which year you're looking at. So yeah, definitely key factors as you laid it out. And again, another great week, I think, for distance from the edge of the fairway. I think you'll hear a lot about total driving this week. I do think it's a better week to kind of create a hybrid of that, or using distance from the edge of the fairway versus strictly driving accuracy. Again, watching for the first time or you're new, this is something that, we preach often. A big proponent of this. Driving accuracy is not useless completely. It is a binary stat, right? When you think about it, it is a yes, no answer. It is fairway hit, yes or no. Distance from the edge of the fairway is going to tell us, I think, a better indicator about who's keeping their ball in play. It can also, be in the first cut of rough, even in a place like this where the rough isn't really super penal. First cut versus, behind a cactus, or in Tiger's case, behind a boulder. That's, going to be scored the same in terms of the way the metric is going to capture a fairway hit or not. So whereas, actually being in play, being in the first cut is not going to be really problematic. So that's going to be a better indicator of accuracy off the tee. Distance from the edge of the fairway, you can model it. It's right here in, in the course metrics page. significantly better stat, in my opinion, if you're trying to capture accuracy off the tee. So, and you can kind of look at some of these things that are comparative to a standard PGA Tour event, how the place is played over the last 5 years, and just driver usage ramping up. You can see here off the tee, driver usage 90% last year, just absolutely wild. You see a standard PGA Tour event around 69%. Last 5 years, we've been around 86%. And you saw last year, over 30% of the drives clearing 320, which is absolutely wild to see. So again, not necessarily an easy birdie fest. There's some great risk reward holes, especially coming down the stretch. It's kind of why there's always some Sunday theater and some end of round theater if you're looking to get your matchups home or anything like that. Because there's just a lot of risk reward coming home. Obviously, the par 3 16th is the famous hole, but 15 and 17 around it, and even 18 I think is a really interesting hole. So it always makes for some real good theater coming down the stretch. So any other field related things or course related things you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, if you go down to the approach ranges, I think kind of digging in and looking at some of those. 150 to 200, that's your key area this week. You got 43% of total approaches coming from there. And then you see a little increase also in the 225 to 250, kind of some of those par threes, and obviously guys going for the green on those par fives are going to be from that range as well. So 150 to 200. And again, another cool thing that I've started to do every week is, obviously I build a huge regular model with everything, but then you can get really kind of in the weeds here and build kind of just an approach model. And so what I'll do is I'll take these exact averages and I'll go into the rabbit hole in the overall approach proximity, and I'll replicate those exact ranges and I'll put the percentages in. And so you can spit out kind of an exact, and it's not going to be perfect because obviously, certain players are going to be hitting from different approach buckets, but just to get a general idea, and you can kind of replicate these exact ranges, and it'll spit out an approach model for you from what guys, obviously if you give it higher weight to 150 to 200, it's gonna show you the guys who are going to excel more in those. So I think that's a really cool way. I've also started to do this with the around the green, taking the amount of approach shots and looking at kind of comparing how guys play in those areas. So I just think those are a couple other ideas for people if they want to kind of get into the strokes gained a little more and kind of isolate each of those.
Love it. Yeah, you can, you build the model, but it's okay to build. You can go in there and build different sub models, and you don't have to, build a one that's just trying to spit out the answers to the test. If you want to kind of get granular and just look at, hey, I'll always, for this event, I looked at, pre models that I had last year. I'm like, all right, I had a driving model basically where I had added some strokes gained off the tee stuff. I had added some distance from the edge of the fairway, messed around with both carry distance and driving distance, and tried to see, what I was trying to think of last year in that. So going into, your previous model save for anyone that's coming back from previous years, or anyone that's new, your models are all going to be saved unless you actually go in and manually delete them. So if you liked something you did last year, you can go in and simply copy the model. It'll load it in. You can add to it. You can mess around with the weights. You can do different things. So I always like to see the things I was looking at last year to see how successful I was. How, was I in the mix? Did I have any of the guys that I was on last year having any Sunday sweats? So I can see Dietrich again ran away, hoping he would come back to the field a little bit on Sunday. But again, another instance of a guy just kind of putting his foot on the gas. You're really winning by margin here. And you can see how everyone got it done. I mean, look, he won at 24. Rest of the pack was at 17 or so. So not super crazy low scoring, obviously, compared to what we've seen at times this year. This can be, to be the winner, you have to go really low. But overall, there's definitely some problems out here. But you can see Seabass typically going to lose on distance, kind of the only red line here. You can see Spieth kind of just getting by around the green. But, to be the winner, you're going to be completely dialed in everywhere. Hard to lose strokes putting here because these POA Triv greens are really pure. And you've seen really high make percentages from even a little bit further out relative to field average. So it's a spot where even some bad below average putters historically have showed up and putted well. This is kind of like old Scotty before he was good putting Scotty. It's like, oh yeah, he putts pretty well here because everyone putts pretty well here. The greens are so pure. Hard to do this. Will Chandler was kind of bleeding off the tee, but again, he around and on the greens got it done. Pretty wild stats there, but you can kind of see nothing that really jumps out. You just kind of have to be dialed in everywhere. And again, solid field as we go back to here. I mean, FanDuel's locking on us, taking some action here, but Scotty, and then obviously a pretty big gap of to down to Xander, which is struggling a little bit. Obviously not making the cut last week. Was covered pretty extensively on Friday, even though in the missed cut number, it's pretty fraudulent because it's actually capturing a bunch of no cut events. But good, good for Xander, good run anyway. Sam Burns, Hideki, Cam Young, Siwoo, Ben Griffin. We get our first sight of Victor Hovland on the PGA Tour this year. Matt McNeely's played well here in the past. Ricky's obviously played well here and is playing better than I think you think he is. Harris English, Matt Fitzpatrick, JJ Spawn, Brooks, Goddard, Morikawa all the way down here. So I mean, this is all short of, at least before these locked. This, I think Spieth, Connors was the cutoff of the 45-1 range. Kind of what you said in average of where we've seen the people that have knocked off Scotty here in the last few years when he's lost. So really strong field for a non-signature event. People like coming here. And I get it. So really tough field. You can go into our tournament cheat sheet. You can see here, just kind of rolling strokes gain numbers. This is not really super surprising. You can also look at recent form, rolling form here. You can start to see the guys who've played quite a bit so far this year. And again, it's obviously going to be capturing stuff from the tail end of last year too. From basically, get the last 3 events, you'll be able to see who's played well over the last handful of events. And then you can look at course history here as well. So you can see here, Scotty missed the cut in 2020 here, T7 in 21, back-to-back 22, 23 wins. And then has not played his best here the last couple of years. This was his debut last year, I believe, coming off of the ravioli incident, T25. But I wouldn't give much credence to that necessarily. But you want to go down and look at previous course history. You can see guys last year, here's Daniel Berger's played here quite a bit and had a couple of nice runs. Michael Kim likes this course, though last year was his best showing. Spieth has a run of 3 consecutive T6 or better finishes for the last 5, which is really interesting. Considering Spieth sometimes can be a little bit wayward off the tee. Matt McNeely back-to-back top 10s here. Cam Young has played well here. Rasmus made his debut last year and finished pretty well. Feels like a decent Min Woo course if he can keep the ball in the park. So you can see here where there's a little bit of consistency of guys playing well. This is a good JT posting course. This is I think you would consider probably a home course for Wyndham Clark, one of the Arizona guys in the field. So you can see course history has been pretty predictive here over the years. Here's Nick Taylor. So really outside of, I think, Augusta and Walleye, I think you see this being one of the top, 5 course history tracks year in and year out. So something that we don't talk about often. Personally, I'm not weighing in modeling very often. I'll use it and look as a tiebreaker at times, but not something I'm giving a ton of weight to. But I do think looking at previous history at TPC Scottsdale or definitely corollary courses makes sense this week.
Yeah, I use it a little more than you do, I think. And just scrolling down this list, I mean, the depth of this field, the more you look, it's like, wow. And you got some really good guys who have been struggling, like Akshay. Akshay's been struggling, great course fit. I really like, 2 guys who kind of played decent last week. Matt McNeely, Cameron Young, they've played, I know Matt played well at Sony as well. So those are 2 guys who, I would definitely consider, without Scheffler. And this is where it gets tricky for me because the more I see some of these names, I'm pretty sure it did happen at the Amex where, Scotty's odds are so good that other guys are going to get pushed down. And it's going to be tempting when you start to see some of these guys at, 45, 50. I mean, even when I looked this morning, Sepp Straka was 90-1, and I know he did not play well at the Amex, but You could build a pretty good card here, but again, are you really going to take that plunge? And
No.
it's just like 50-50, like flip a coin. Scotty wins or he doesn't. So
Again, we referenced it coming off of the Amex win. And again, shout out to Sully and the team at No Laying Up because they had led their pod with it. And that's where I heard it. And they're splitting out some of the data. Scotty has won 42% of his starts since switching to the mallet putter. That 42% of his starts. That's so it is basically a coin flip. And it just doesn't seem like on a spot that he's won twice before. It just doesn't seem like a spot that I want to run head first into that to, again, feel always like I'm drawn to the getting the best of the number. But at the same time, like I know I'm leaving equity on the table, but I also feel like I don't want to be dead on Friday afternoon when he's 2 shots up. And it's different. When he's 2 shots up, it's like Rosie being 7 shots up on Saturday afternoon. I feel like he's 2 shots up and he has 24 more holes to play. All he's going to do is continue to extend that gap versus, he's 2 shots up. Sure, anything can happen. And that's true. There's a little bit of boogeyman here going on, but this is very reminiscent of peak Tiger. I'm sorry, it just is. That when guys see him on the leaderboard, there definitely is a sense of having to like change your style of play a little bit. If you want to go out and win, you're going to have to go out and seek opportunities and be more aggressive. And at times, if it gets players out of their rhythm or what they would typically like to do, that's not ideal for PGA Tour players. You want to be able to kind of stay in your lane and do your thing, but it's hard to see him at the top and not be like, man, if I want a shot to win this, I got to kind of level up a little bit. And he doesn't allow it to happen. So without Scheffler markets for me, 100%, just not at a spot like this where, again, I thought it made sense to take him on at Amex because even though he's played well there in the past, I just felt like it was a spot where you maybe need to get to 30 to win. That just invites more variance. This really isn't that, in my opinion. So even though, Dietrich got to 24 last year, you saw the rest of the pack in the high teens. So again, just my opinion, to each their own. Knock yourself out, take them on. You're going to get some big numbers. I would maybe even wait a little bit. I think you'll be able to let numbers drift on Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday. You'll probably be able to get some really big prices in the full field market. But I'm not messing around with it. Yeah, you can see Decky here, not really threatening the top of the board ever, but just really strong, consistent finishes, week in and week out. Keith Mitchell's kind of the same. We've seen some really good Fitz performances last year at this point, he was lost. Siwoo's been really good. Kitayama's been solid. Again, another great example of a great ball striker who struggles to putt, who shut up and been pretty competitive here at times. Strong field, strong course history, and definitely an interesting week. Horschel. I was on Horschel last year. All right. This is again our tournament cheat sheet. If you want to look at this, you can kind of, again, course history, rolling form, basic strokes gain metrics, all in one, or you can go into the rabbit hole and start to cut stuff up. What should we look at here before we end everyone on their way?
So this is one of those weeks where you kind of got average scoring here. It's not really easy, not really difficult. The course length, you can't really look at that as much. It kind of in the middle of the pack. So for me, I think, I'll look, if you want to look at something like that, what I would do is, I'll take average and then I'll branch it out to easy and difficult. If you want to do that, same thing with course length. I'll go short, average, long, but again, it's not really a week that I'm going to focus on those. So for me, like, I think desert courses, I think that's one. And if you go back to the main screen, I think the correlated courses, there's a lot of courses. And if you just want to take that route, because this is going to combine desert courses, it's going to combine some of the easier or courses that are important to gain strokes off the tee. You see courses like TPC Craig Ranch, Black Desert Resort is another one where, not totally similar, but you have that desert environment. You don't want to be wild, on that course either, because you have obviously the, what is it there? What's that Black Desert again? The The word's escaping me when you hit it wide off the fairway. The moon rocks, whatever it is.
Moon rocks. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want to be wildly errant. So I think there's some really good course comps in there. And so this is a tool that you just need to click that one button and it's going to bring all these courses to you. And so for something like this, I'll take probably maybe like a 3-year average because you do have a good list of courses here. Some like Chapultepec, that's going back a ways. So not a lot of players would have played that one, but I think this is just a good mix. Obviously, you have a few elements of TPC Sawgrass here with some of the water hazards and, the need to be, find the fairway. So I think this is a good, if you want just something quick, you don't want to get into the weeds with desert and mountain courses. And, even sometimes I'll go strokes gained west because, a lot of these, some guys just play better west of the Mississippi River, which is basically what that's capturing. But I think this is just a good method. And the thing is with this does not include TPC Scottsdale. So you can look at just Scottsdale, or you can look at these correlated courses where it's kind of, just an interesting mix here, but just another way to look at it.
I like it. Yeah. This nice little one-click button there. And we're looking at last 3 years, put on minimum 12-round feature in to kind of weed out any of the noise of small samples, and looking at ball striking because I think you're going to get some variance in, putting surfaces or how those are going to play. I think really what we want to see here is probably ball striking or tee to green. Obviously, ball striking, super important. Again, with the variance of around the green play between how much is going to be thick rough, how much is going to be short grass, basically pulling out putting and around the green here, looking at the ball striking, you could see where, again, Scotty separates, gaining basically a shot more than the next closest guy. Colin Morikawa barely fits the time frame, but at 1.76. If you're ever interested to see, to Ron's point, like, who's playing where, some of these guys aren't playing a lot of these events. You can actually click into the blue number here, the rounds played, and you'll see which rounds are actually feeding the data here. So if you want to see specifically what they are, but and Kurt Kitayama, again, touched on Kitayama ball striking numbers are going to look pretty good. Here's Hideki again, Wyndham Clark, Rico Hoey, captain of Team No Putt. Austin Smotherman looks like he wants to be that captain or at least be on the team. Ball striking has been pretty solid, but the putter is probably pretty problematic. Siwoo, here's Sepp. Again, getting questions about Sepp. Ron's highlighting a 90 to 1. I don't think it's a bad Sepp spot. When we look at approach ranges and again, this is probably overfitting and getting too granular. We got a lot of 150 to 200, as we saw, and you got a big sample of even, again, above tour average from 225 to 250. Sepp is fine there. Great iron player. He's above average there for sure. Sepp, in my opinion, separates when the wedge number is bigger. So Sepp 150 and down is a little bit better to me than Sepp from 150 to 200. Again, he's still above average in all these. So again, we're picking nits for sure. And it's a big price. I'm a Sepp guy. So I don't hate it at all. And you can see we're green across the board. So everything's positive here for Sepp. I just will tend to be thinking about Sepp on a Monday morning more when I know it's going to be more wedge fest. Again, not precluding him from the fields or the car necessarily. Again, price sensitive. Tom Kim showed up a little bit, played pretty well last week at times in that spot that I don't think is a Tom Kim track. Kevin Hugh and ball striking numbers are going to be good. Hoagie's playing better golf. Smalley, better ball striker off the tee guy than you think. Putter can be a problem, and that's what you see here. So again, I think this is a good look, just kind of looking at ball striking on comp courses. Let's add Scottsdale and see what changes here, if anything. We'll apply that, update the data. So we're adding all the comp courses, and then we're going to add and see how much Scotty separates. So he actually got a little worse, surprisingly, but separated a little bit more from Morikawa. Hovland pops in because he's not playing a lot of the other courses, but he is playing here. Here's Smotherman again, more Sepp, Siwoo, Clark. Here's Spieth again, probably not playing a lot in the other ones, but is getting a pretty good bump for obviously playing well here the last handful of years. Decky drops off a little bit. Corey Connors, Smalley. So really good high level spot to start looking at the importance of ball striking on comp courses. I like it. What else should we look at? Let's build a little hybrid total driving.
Yeah, I think for sure, driver heavy, this is pretty much maybe the premier ultimate, driver heavy course on tour. And again, if you want to combine that with high missed fairway penalty, if you want to just look at, DFEF, distance from edge of the fairway, I think there's a lot of ways you could go here. Because obviously you don't want to be wild off the tee, but at the same time, the rough here is only between 2 and 2.5 inches. So not really that penal. It's just, you just don't want to find those desert areas in the water. So that's really what you're trying to avoid here.
Yeah, this is a great way for people that are new to the tool and you're kind of messing around. You go into the filters using this course stats page and looking at the course facts at the top. We're going to give you some of the answers and on some of the settings and things that you can do. So when Ron says driver heavy, you can see right here off the tee club type driver heavy. And we showed that in the data earlier. When you go down here to off the tee, you can see the driver usage is significantly above tour average. So that kind of helps you. You're thinking about, hey, I overwhelmed. There's so much data. There's so many filters. I don't know which filters to turn on or to turn off. I would think, again, using the models that we built, you could see some of the things in the filtering that we're doing. Obviously, we're trying to do it here on the show for you, but then using this course stats page to look at some of these things. And again, don't set all these filters at once. So don't go in and go, okay, driver heavy, easy off the tee, difficult fairway accuracy. You're going to start to overfit and kill your sample, where eventually you're just going to be looking at last year's waste management. So look at these one at a time. You're trying to pull other instances of driver heavy golf courses. You're trying to find other instances of, easy scrambling from the rock, whatever it is. Don't overfit and look at too many things at once. Look at a couple of different things at a time. So looking at driver heavy, it shows us that our missed fairway penalty is average, rough penalty low, because again, rough is not a problem here, but missing the fairway is a problem because you can be in those desert waste areas. So again, use all of the things together to try to build these the models and look at the data the right way. So we just look at off the tee driver heavy and look at some of the off the tee stuff. We'll look at some of the ball striking. We'll back out here. Let's go last calendar year. So we should have a decent sample of driver heavy. Put a minimum round feature to pull some of the small sample out. We go average off the tee in the last 12 months. A couple of young bombers, a bunch of young bombers. Looks like Michael Brennan, bounce back spot for Michael Brennan after his DQ last week. Marco Penge, again, not a lot of Marco Penge, but it hits the ball a mile. We'll show some of that data here in a second. Pearson Cootie's playing some really good golf, gaining off the tee. Driver heavy has been really nice. Putter's kind of running back into form after some uneven putting performances, which is not his MO. It's really good putter baseline. Rico Hoey. Again, we know Rico's story. Maybe the belly lab putter can solve things for Rico this year. We'll see. Ball striking is always good. Thor Bjornsson, I think a great setup for him this week. Again, was in the mix a little bit at Torrey. Scotty, Potgieter obviously sends it. We'll see if Potgieter and Penge can continue to get it done with the PXG switch. People aren't necessarily super excited about that, which I understand. Xander, Kevin Yu, got her up. Yeah, some of this familiar names. Here's Kitayama, Cam Young, Jordan Spieth, Højgaards. So I think it's a really, really good setup there. I think driver heavy when you're looking at, if you get into off the tee specifically, so who's having to take driver out a lot and keep themselves in play off the tee, this is where you can start to look at the distance from the edge of the fairway stuff. So, reverse, who's putting themselves out of play. Last calendar year, Steven Yeager, Eric Cole, Billy Horschel, real small sample, but spraying a little bit. Both Højgaards, which is problematic because I like them both quite a bit here this week, and they both played well here in the past. The Gala, playing a little bit better. Got her up. Just play that low stinger and send it. Let it roll for days. Minwoo, we know when it goes wrong, it goes way wrong. Here's a Wyndham, which we know could be the same thing. Kitayama. So, keeping the ball in play is going to matter. It's not a huge gap for some of these guys, but we know Morikawa. We know Kanai is going to keep it in play off the tee. Berger, Connors, Poston. Again, so these guys have decent course history here. So they're not sacrificing a ton with distance, but keeping the ball in play off the tee. Siwoo, again, you saw Seabez was in here in the mix last year a little bit. Here's Scotty, here's Sepp. We know Sepp's keeping it in play off the tee. Nick Taylor's played well here. That's been his MO. So again, combining distance with the distance from the fairway, because it's not a spot where I would say, hey, I just want accuracy. You definitely need to send it, because going for the green and being able to, be aggressive is going to matter a lot too. Yeah. I want to look at the live leaderboard. Let's see. We launched our live leaderboard. I want Ron to talk through this a little bit. This is brand new. And again, live leaderboard in the name, meaning you can look at this when golf's being played. It is fast. Pretty sure faster than anything else you can watch out there. Some other comparable live leaderboards with significantly more details, more stats, round by round. Obviously, you can look at the post-tournament stuff. But talk to us about the live leaderboard here.
Yeah, so basically, this has 45 plus metrics, and yeah, it updates pretty much almost instantly. So if you're watching on on TV, you're looking on the PGA Tour site, very similar to those same fast updates. And yeah, the cool thing is, obviously we have you looking at strokes gained right here. You can get some of this, obviously on other sites, but when you go up to the tee to green tab up there, and then the other one, like, we're talking, all the other, you go on driving stats, distance, if you want to know who's, you want to look at distance from edge of the fairway, like on a course like Torrey Pines yesterday, something I tweeted about Justin Rose was, good. You can see there only 15 yards he was missing. And so, yeah, it's just a cool way to see, whether it's proximity numbers. And if you scroll over, you'll see, by the ranges. So if you want to see who's hitting wedges, whether it's, a week like last week where, 200 plus matters, see kind of, who's hitting it good there. And again, what do you want around the green, scrambling, pretty much anything that you want to look at. I know there's more that we're going to add eventually here, but yeah, you're not going to find this stuff anywhere else. So it's just, if you bet during the tournament, and you're looking specifically, want to get really into the weeds here with some of these stats, I think it's kind of perfect for that. And even if you want to check, I think this is a really cool thing. If you go to the last tab, the scoring one here, and you go all the way over, if you want to see who's hitting it, the ball speed for the week, this is somewhere where I've, Justin Rose, we looked talking about his speed gains. Yeah. I think yesterday, he was up over 180 with a few shots, but I think he, even in round 4, like he was even faster than he was earlier in the week. So if you go to the right there and go all the way to the
I'm in the spinning wheel because I switched to it. So it's, here we go. Yeah.
So yeah, Apex, you want to see, on weeks that are windy, see who's hitting it high, who's hitting it low. But it's just a great tool to, if you want to look at the full data, not just strokes gained. I think it's just really cool, and it's a great addition.
Yeah. Yeah, Sam, great resource for it. Personally, I will. This past week, I was just out of pocket a little bit, so I wasn't, I wasn't grinding it, but I'm super excited. I used it a little bit more the previous week where we were testing it, and have used it for the live stuff. So yeah, you want to get a sense of, again, in the moment strokes gain data, who's just ball striking it, but putting is struggling, or you can reverse, right? Where you can fade someone that's looking to, that's, putting out of their mind. There are opportunities there. Obviously looking at, live ads to see, who's playing really well, but actually just, missing some putts. I think it's a great way to look at it too. So yeah, this is, I think, a tremendous resource for live betting. Again, personally, I just living life, smelling the roses this week a little bit, but
And I know people are gonna ask about hole data, so that's I know that's getting pretty popular as well. People betting specific holes, so yeah, that's definitely coming down the road too. But I think this is a good start for now, and the goal is definitely to as much as we can, per hole, per shot, as much as we can here real soon.
Yep, you can download any of this data into a CSV, which is an awesome resource if you just want to keep some of this stuff on your own and kind of manipulate some of the data. If you just want to, people always complain about their favorites in the PGA Tour app and all those things. You can do all that here too. Just highlight your favorites, your DFS lineups, core guys, your betting outrights, whatever you're looking to do. You can just it'll just populate your favorites only. This is a great way. And again, search anybody here. You can mess around with where they rank in the field, what the actual average number is, which is I think the best way to look at it. And again, you can go back to the previous rounds when you're live as well, right? We're in round 2 and you want to see how things went live in round 1, you can go and click right into that. So fantastic resource. Again, for any subscribers, if you are not a subscriber, you'll have limited access to it, but just take advantage. Subscribe, get in there and take a look. A really good question here from James. If I sign up, are there preset models available to build DK lineups? I want someone else to determine how to weigh each category and make DFS decisions based off of that. Yes, totally get it. And not uncommon because, again, the modeling process is a little bit tricky. If you just go to our the homepage, a few different things. So you can find models from some contributors on the staff. Right here, just kind of click into view model. You can click into our key stats model. So it's just kind of a high view, not super granular, but just not to overcomplicate things. Just one of the main things for the week. You can click into this. And again, you can download this into a CSV to help build your player pool, mess around with your weights and upload it back into the DFS optimizer, which we have in here as well, if that's your thing. So you can see this makes sense. Not only is Scotty number 1, Scotty's number 1 by margin, which is, I think, an indicator of a pretty sound model structurally. If you are messing around and building a model, just be fair. Scotty's not 1. You overfit the model, in my opinion. You did something wrong, basically, where you did something that's maybe too granular. That's not capturing really where we currently are in the state of golf when he's in the field. So again, does not mean that he's going to win, but there's nothing you should be doing statistically model wise that should have someone other than Scotty Scheffler at the top. So
agreed. And let me just show 2 more things really quick here. Click on a player's name, and if you go to one thing we also just added is if you go down to their tournament results section, you can now click on the tournaments and it will open up and you can see the actual rounds played now. Before you could not do this. So this is now available as well. So you can get it from the main rabbit hole. If you click on the blue round number, that will open up whatever you're looking at. But if you're on the player page, this is another way to do that. And one more thing, because people are asking me about this. If you go to the rolling summary, so back on the main rabbit hole, and obviously I tweeted something out about Justin Rose. His ball speed went up from 172, and I think he was, like I said, 176, 177 on the weekend here. And yeah, so this rolling, I don't even think many people know about this page yet. It's kind of tucked away here. Yeah, but if you change the scroll up a little bit and change it to years instead of rounds in the top right there. And so if you go and look here and just click on ball speed. So change the strokes gained total to ball speed on the metric section there. And so this is where I got that data from. So, you can clearly see we have it. If you want to do it by rounds, you can, but I think it was just an easier comparison to go year by year here.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, if you want to compare players to see where they are, obviously some guys have limited rounds so far this year, but usually that's enough. And again, I know players early in the year, they might be a little bit slower than normal until they get into the swing of things. But you do see some guys like, Matt McNeely was another one who was up, around 2.5, 3 miles an hour. So this is another good way to just look at guys and compare. Just kind of what form they're in, what what guys did work in the off season, who's trying to increase their speed, who's losing speed. It's a good way to look at injuries potentially, who's maybe struggling with something. And so you can do this for literally any stat that we have if you want to compare by rounds, by years. And like you said, it's just an amazing thing that I don't think many people realize it's sitting here.
I absolutely love the rolling averages. I also love looking at it on a player page where you can go into this. Here is looking at round by round, which is great. Rolling averages are awesome. Also, just looking at year by year, I want to see where some of those gains are happening too. Right, we could see, oh man, this is we've really kind of flipped the switches again. This indicates Scotty's shows Scotty's putting gains again, similar view to the other one, but again, you can do it on the player page as well. So, fantastic. Whereas, look, I mean, this is a small sample, but last year we have 80 rounds of him gaining a half stroke on the field and putting, whereas just 2 years ago, that's almost a full stroke per round on the field difference between 2023, which is a fantastic year for Scotty. This is where we're at. So again, a few different ways to look at this, but this is a great way to, instead of getting granular and having to pick the player, the rolling averages allows you to look at it from a high level and hone in on all these players at once, which is awesome. Yes, this is great. You look at a few guys, like, again, smaller sample still, it's early, but Cam Young, we're down a little bit. That doesn't signal anything to me except maybe a little bit more intentionality about not spraying it, right? Where you could still keep it at 180, keep the ball, still have a huge advantage, but not necessarily going for broke all the time. And again, it's small sample. Again, what's unique again about this week is where you have one course, 4 rounds, measured data coming off of a couple events in a row with less than driver, course rotations. So the 2026 data here is super duper small sample wise because of the limited measured rounds that we've played so far this year. So really excited that we actually have some good stuff this week to get into it. So this is a great way to kind of capture that, right? So small sample for Xander, ball speeds up a little bit. Okay. Is there something there? Lamprecht hits it a mile. It's 1 million feet tall. But looks like he's maybe dialed it back. We'll see. We'll see how that speaks after, again, getting the 4 measured rounds of driver heavy this week. I think looking at this next Monday is really going to be impactful to see if there's any trends, knowing the guys are banging 13, 14 drivers here this week, which is, pretty impactful. Helps the data set for sure. So good call out. Again, go to the view section. It defaults to strokes gains. You can get into any of the strokes gain buckets. But again, the around the green types, this is where we're referencing how frequently are you getting rough around the green versus short shaved runoffs. You're looking at putting ranges, looking at miscellaneous metrics is another spot where you can look at club head speed, apex height, ball speed. The floor ceiling model is, I think, something that DFS players are missing out if they are not using this and not leveraging this. People talk about spiked weeks all the time. I've never seen anyone else reference spiked weeks with any data. They say spiked weeks. It's not measuring anything to the field. It's just kind of broad usage. This is actually the data behind what spiked looks like. How frequently does it happen? What is your spiked range? So like gaining versus gaining 5 strokes in a key metric area. This is going to be able to give this, and you could filter it through any of the other conditions as well. So again, if I don't play DFS for volume, I'm a single entry 3 max kind of guy. But if I was building out huge player pools, I would want this data, being a key part to understand where can I capture spiked, especially spiked putting. So again, reach out if you have questions. Ron and I are always available. Our Twitter handles are on the screen here. We are in Discord for subscribers. If you tag us, just again, we're in there often casually, but if you tag us, we'll come and find it. Obviously, you can message us on Twitter on our Betsperts golf accounts. You can DM us if you have any questions. Again, a lot of tutorials on the site. We try to make it as easy as possible. Again, I know the amount of data that we've shown even today is probably 5% of what we have, and they can be overwhelming. So I get the question that James had where, Leveraging just the specific models that are on the site that people have. And you can go in here too. If you go into expert model section, you're going to find some other folks around the industry that are making models as well. The team over at Preferred Lines, John Hasselbauer and Joe Idone, who do really good work. Their models are in here as well. See Matt Vicenzi, who's been really good outright better for a number of years. Matt's covering live golf now, but again, I think looking at what Matt's doing, I think is impactful and can be good and helpful. So you can see some other stuff in here, along with obviously Pat Mayo, our guy Andy Molitor as well. So lots of good stuff in here if you want to see other people's models and what they're looking at. So pricing's out. Let's see if we can refresh the rabbit hole. Usually pretty quick. It'll update here. You can hide salaries, look at salaries here as well if you want when that comes out. So anything else to the people, Rob, before we wrap?
No, I think we covered a bunch here, so that was good.
Yeah, covered a bunch. Again, reach out if you have any specific questions. Appreciate everyone hanging out. Come back. Again, Betsperts Golf, wherever you listen to podcasts. Betsperts Golf on YouTube. Andy and myself will be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, for our betting thoughts, and we'll get into a little bit more course history stuff. So